We are deep in the heart of the dead zone. It is 60 miles inland on the Antarctic ice shelf. The sun hasn't been seen in 3 months. The temperature has plummeted to minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Here, a tiny emperor penguin chick stands alone. He is a ball of grey down, no bigger than a melon. His father, exhausted and starving after 4 months of fasting, has momentarily lost him in the chaos of a shifting huddle. To this chick, the world is nothing but a wall of white noise and lethal ice. If he touches the frozen ground for more than 2 minutes, his heart will stop. He calls out, a high-pitched whistle, but the hurricane-force winds snatch the sound and tear it to pieces. To the thousands of other adults nearby, he is a stranger. In this frozen wasteland, charity is a luxury no one can afford. Every bird is fighting their own private war with extinction. This little chick is on the verge of becoming a permanent part of the ice. At the very last second, a miracle of biology happens. Out of 10,000 identical voices, his mother hears his. She scoops him onto her feet, tucking him into a warm, feathered pocket of skin. But as the storm grows, even a mother's love isn't enough. To survive the night, they must do something no other complex life form on Earth can do. They must join the Great Huddle. This is the story of the impossible life of penguins. Before we can understand the penguin, we have to understand the place it chose to call home. Antarctica is not simply cold. It is hostile in a way that feels almost intentional. The interior of the continent receives less than 2 inches of precipitation per year, making it technically the largest desert on Earth. What little snow does fall never melts. It compresses over centuries, stacks, fuses, and slowly becomes part of an ice sheet in places almost 3 miles thick. Below that ice is a continent, rock, mountains, lakes, that has not seen sunlight in millions of years. Average winter temperatures in the interior sit near minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but temperature alone does not tell the full story. The winds here are called katabatic winds, and they form when cold, dense air pours off the elevated central plateau and accelerates toward the coast. These winds regularly exceed 60 miles per hour. In major storms, they push past 120. When you combine that wind with the temperature, you get wind chills that approach minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit. At minus 100 wind chill, exposed human skin freezes solid in under 90 seconds. Diesel fuel gels, metal becomes brittle. Even the science stations built specifically to survive this environment routinely lose power and equipment, and the physical landscape itself never stays still. The sea ice that forms around the continent each winter, a platform that can extend the land surface by an area larger than the United States, is constantly moving, cracking and reforming. Icebergs carve from glaciers and drift north. Vast ice, the frozen sea locked to the coastline, can appear solid 1 month and break apart entirely the next. Nothing here is permanent. This is, by almost every measure, one of the least hospitable environments that complex life has ever tried to occupy, and emperor penguins have been doing it for at least 40 million years. To understand why, you have to understand that survival in extreme environments almost never comes from brute strength. It comes from timing, from knowing exactly when to move, when to stop, when to eat, and when to fast. Emperor penguins did not conquer Antarctica. They learned to read it, and to build their entire lives around its rhythms. Every year, in the deep of the Antarctic autumn, March and April in the southern hemisphere, something remarkable happens along the coastline. The emperors begin to move inland, not toward food, not toward warmth, inland, away from the ocean, away from everything that sustains them. They walk in long, quiet lines, sometimes for 70 miles or more, heading toward a breeding site that, to human eyes, looks completely empty. A flat expanse of frozen sea ice with nothing to recommend it except one crucial quality. It has stayed frozen in the same location for hundreds of years. They are walking toward the coldest part of the Antarctic year, toward the darkness, and they are doing it on purpose. The logic, once you understand it, is precise. Emperor penguins are the largest of all penguin species, standing nearly 4 feet tall and weighing up to 100 pounds. Their chicks take more than 7 months to develop, from egg to ocean-ready juvenile. No other breeding timeline fits the Antarctic calendar. If they waited for summer, there would simply not be enough time. So they do the only thing they can. They start in the dark, in the brutal heart of winter, on a platform of ice that won't break apart until their chicks are ready to swim. When the colony assembles, and tens of thousands of penguins converge on the same patch of ice they left the previous year, the mating begins quickly. Males and females call to one another, find their partners, and within a few weeks, each female lays a single egg. One egg, one chance. The handoff is the most dangerous moment in the entire cycle. The egg must travel from the female's feet to the male's feet without touching the ice. If it touches the ice, even for a moment, it freezes. All of that effort, all of that journey, ends before it begins. When the transfer is complete, the female turns and walks back toward the ocean, back toward the coast, 50, 60, 70 miles away, back to the sea where she will spend the next 4 months feeding, rebuilding the weight she lost on the march, preparing for the moment her chick will hatch and need to be fed, and the male stays. He will stand on that ice, holding a single egg on his feet, covered by a warm fold of skin called the brood pouch, for 4 months. Through total darkness, through storms that would kill most large mammals in hours, without eating a single meal. The huddle is one of the most studied and most remarkable survival structures in the natural world. It is not simply a group of animals standing close together for warmth. It is a dynamic, self-organizing system, a living architecture that the penguins have refined over millions of years of evolution, and that no human engineer has yet been able to fully replicate in a computer model. At its core, the logic is simple. A single emperor penguin standing alone in a -40-degree blizzard will die. 2,000 standing together will survive. The interior of a large huddle can reach temperatures close to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, more than 100 degrees warmer than the air just inches outside it. But warmth alone does not explain it. The extraordinary part is the movement. Every few minutes, in small waves that start from the windward edge, the penguins shift. Not randomly, in rolling, coordinated pulses. The birds on the outside edge press gently inward. The birds in the centre are displaced toward a slightly less exposed position. Over the course of an hour, every penguin in the huddle has rotated. No individual stays on the cold edge long enough to lose critical body heat. There is no leader orchestrating this. There is no signal given. It emerges entirely from each bird responding to simple pressure and temperature cues. And the result is a self-sustaining, rotating collective system that keeps all of them alive through the worst storms on the planet. Through all of this, each male holds his egg on his feet, motionless from the waist down. Even as the huddle shifts around him, even as he is pushed and jostled by thousands of bodies, he keeps that egg elevated, balanced, covered. A single stumble, a single moment of dropping it below the brood pouch, and the embryo inside will be dead before he can recover it. He stands like this for 4 months. His weight drops from close to 90 pounds to less than 50. His fat reserves shrink toward nothing. His muscles begin to break down for fuel. By the end, when the faintest light begins returning to the Antarctic sky, many males are barely able to stand. Some fall. Not all of them get back up, but most of them do. And from beneath their brood pouches, if you listen carefully in that still moment when a storm briefly pauses, you can hear something extraordinary. A chick calling. The females are coming. For 4 months they have been at sea, diving to depths of nearly 1,500 feet in pursuit of fish, squid and krill, building back the weight they lost, storing energy not just for themselves, but for the meal that is waiting for them 70 miles inland. The meal their chick needs within days of hatching. Emperor penguin milk, if you can call it that, it is technically a stomach secretion, is among the richest of any bird species. It contains nearly 30% fat and 60% protein. It is essentially concentrated survival in liquid form. The male can produce a small emergency supply for the first few days after hatching, enough to keep a newborn alive. But he has almost nothing left to give. The chick's survival now depends entirely on the timing of the female's return. When the females arrive, what happens next is one of the most astonishing feats of biological recognition in the animal kingdom. There are 20,000 penguins in this colony. Every bird looks to human eyes nearly identical. The noise is overwhelming, a constant rolling cacophony of calls that blends into something that sounds like white noise. And yet, the female walks into that crowd and calls, one specific call, a call unique to her, shaped by a pattern of frequency and rhythm that has not changed since she last used it, 4 months ago. And somewhere in those 20,000 birds the male hears it. Across hundreds of yards and thousands of bodies they find each other. The chick is transferred. The male, barely upright, turns toward the coast. The walk back to the ocean, the same 70 miles he walked in the autumn, may take several days. He has not eaten in over 100 days. He is running on biological fumes. Some do not complete the walk. But those that reach the water dive in immediately, and the ocean finally gives them back what the winter took. While the Emperor Fathers were standing in the dark, the ocean was quietly preparing. The spring returns and the sun climbs higher over Antarctica. Sunlight floods into the surface waters of the Southern Ocean for the first time in 6 months. And what happens next is one of the largest biological events on Earth. Phytoplankton, microscopic single-celled plants, explode into a bloom so vast that it is visible from satellites in space. Patches of ocean that were dark and empty turn vivid green within days. This bloom is the foundation of everything. Every fish, every squid, every seal, every whale, every penguin in the Southern Ocean ultimately depends on this single event. Following the phytoplankton comes the krill. Antarctic krill, Euphausia superba, are small shrimp-like crustaceans rarely more than 2.5 inches long, but they exist in quantities almost too large to make sense. Total Antarctic krill biomass is estimated at somewhere between 300 and 500 million metric tons. At peak concentration, a swarm can reach densities of 30,000 individuals per cubic meter. From underwater, they look like a living orange fog that stretches to the horizon. For emperor penguins, and for nearly every predator in the Southern Ocean, this is the reason for everything. The 4 months of starvation, the 70-mile march, the huddle in the dark. All of it is timed ultimately to arrive at this moment, when the ocean is full, when the chick is growing, and when there is enough food to sustain the entire cycle for 1 more year. The emperor chicks, now several weeks old, are growing fast. Both parents take turns making feeding trips to the coast, returning to regurgitate rich, partially digested meals directly into the chick's mouth. The colony, which spent the winter as a silent, motionless huddle, has transformed into something loud, chaotic, and very much alive. But the chick has not yet seen the ocean, has never swum, has never hunted. In a few months that will have to change, and the change will come without instruction, without any gradual introduction. One day the ice will begin to break apart beneath them, and the chick will have to figure out the rest. Emperor penguins cannot fly. Their wings became flippers somewhere in the deep evolutionary past, and the trade-off was absolute. Gain one world, surrender another. But underwater, something extraordinary happens. The moment a penguin enters the water, every biological system that seemed awkward or heavy on land becomes a precisely engineered instrument of speed and agility. Their wings, stiff, narrow, shaped like hydrofoils, generate lift and thrust in the same motion. Their bodies are coated in feathers so densely layered that they trap a thin film of air, reducing drag and providing insulation against water temperatures that sit at 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Their bones are denser than those of flying birds, providing negative buoyancy that makes it easier to stay submerged. They can swim at sustained speeds of 8 to 10 miles per hour, in short bursts approaching 15. They can hold their breath for over 20 minutes. They can dive to nearly 1,500 feet. a depth where the pressure would kill an unprotected human in seconds. Their blood carries oxygen more efficiently than almost any other animal their size. Their muscles are stocked with myoglobin, the oxygen-binding protein that gives seal and penguin meat its famously dark colour. These are not adaptations for surviving in Antarctica. These are adaptations for dominating it. In the water, emperor penguins are not prey struggling to survive. They are predators operating near the peak of their physical capacity. The chicks have none of this yet, not fully. Their juvenile plumage is still coming in. Their dive reflexes are unrefined. The first time they enter the ocean, they will have to learn by doing. And the ocean, which is full of leopard seals, orcas and petrels at the water's edge, will not offer a gentle introduction. But they enter anyway, because their parents have stopped coming back to feed them, and hunger is a more immediate threat than predators. This is the moment that separates the survivors from those who will not make it. Out of the tens of thousands of chicks that hatched in this colony, some percentage have already died to cold, to separation, to starvation. Now the ocean takes its share, but those who make it through the first weeks at sea will carry with them the genetic blueprint for surviving everything this continent has thrown at their species for 40 million years. Emperor penguins are the most famous, but they are far from alone. Antarctica and the islands of the Southern Ocean support 6 major breeding penguin species, and each one has made a different bargain with this environment. Understanding the emperors fully means understanding what makes their strategy unique, and what the alternatives look like. 1,000 miles north of the emperor breeding grounds, on a sub-Antarctic island called South Georgia, the strategy is almost the opposite. King penguins, the second largest species nearly as tall as emperors, breed here on bare ground, surrounded by grassland and relatively accessible coastline. Their breeding cycle is not shorter than the emperor's. In fact, it is longer, over 14 months to raise a single chick, meaning some pairs can only breed twice in 3 years. But the king penguin's bet is different. Instead of surviving the worst winter on Earth, they simply work around it. South Georgia's ocean never freezes. Food remains available year-round. The cold here is serious, but it is not the existential gauntlet the emperors face. The trade-off is numbers. Where emperor colonies are brutally efficient and tightly controlled, king penguin colonies are almost overwhelming in their chaos. 500,000 birds on a single beach, chicks forming enormous shifting creches, massive groups of juveniles packing together while parents hunt at sea. The noise alone is staggering. Further north still, on rocky windswept islands and cliff faces, rockhopper penguins have taken the most physically audacious approach of all. Their name is not metaphorical. They launch themselves into crashing surf, let the waves carry them to the base of a cliff, and then physically hop upward, using both feet together in a series of powerful jumps to reach nesting ledges that no predator can follow them to. Adelie penguins, small and deceptively feisty, nest on rocky shores cleared of snow, arriving with almost military precision as spring breaks, and building nests from stolen pebbles, a currency of trust and theft in equal measure. Chinstraps nest on steep island slopes, timing their arrivals with the kind of precision that would impress an air traffic controller. Macaroni penguins, the most numerous penguin on Earth, with estimated populations exceeding 18 million, cling to wet, sloping ground that looks far too unstable to raise a chick. All different, all adapted to their specific version of this environment, all, in their own way, walking the same edge between survival and catastrophe. For tens of millions of years, these animals evolved in a world that was brutal but consistent. Cold when it was supposed to be cold. Icy when the ice was needed. Predictable. Not in the way we think of predictability, but in the deep biological sense. Consistent enough that an animal could evolve a breeding strategy around its rhythms and trust that those rhythms would hold. That consistency is ending. The Antarctic Peninsula, the long arm of land that juts northward from the continent, has warmed by nearly 5 degrees Fahrenheit over the last 50 years. That is among the fastest warming rates recorded anywhere on Earth. Sea ice that once formed reliably every winter now forms later, breaks earlier, or in some years near the peninsula's tip does not form at all. For Adelie penguins, this is catastrophic. Their entire breeding strategy depends on predictable sea ice, stable enough to nest near, extensive enough to access their feeding grounds without excessive travel. When the ice fails, the strategy fails. Adelie colonies along the northern peninsula have shrunk by 70 to 80% over the past 3 decades. Not because the birds died, because the environment they built their biology around no longer exists in the form it once did. Meanwhile, Gentoo penguins, more flexible, more tolerant of open water, are expanding. Their colonies are moving south, into areas that were too cold for them just decades ago. In some stretches of the peninsula, where Adelie colonies have collapsed, Gentoo colonies are filling the gap. This is not recovery, it is replacement. One adapted species making way for another, not by choice, but because the planet changed faster than evolution could track. Chinstrap penguins, whose survival is tightly linked to krill abundance, face a different pressure. Krill populations fluctuate with sea ice extent because krill larvae depend on algae that grows under sea ice during winter. Less sea ice means less larval food. Less larval food means smaller krill populations the following summer. Some chinstrap colonies have declined by more than 50% over 30 years, and krill scarcity is one of the leading explanations. For emperor penguins specifically, the mathematics of sea ice are existential. They need sea ice stable enough to hold a breeding colony for 7+ months. They need it close enough to the ocean to allow feeding trips. Some models now project that, depending on how quickly warming continues, the majority of emperor penguin colonies could experience near-total breeding failure by the end of this century. In 2022, scientists documented the collapse of 4 emperor penguin colonies, all 4 in areas where sea ice had failed to form that season. No ice, no breeding platform, no chicks. These are not hypothetical warnings, this is already happening. Let's return to the chick. She found her mother. The call cut through the noise, the storm, the crowd. She pushed through legs and bodies she did not recognize until she reached the one she did. She is warm now, fed. The immediate crisis is over, but she carries with her the entire weight of this species' story. The 70-mile march, the 4 months of darkness, the huddle and the cold and the starvation and the storms, the ocean that will test her, the ice that may or may not hold. There is a version of nature documentary that treats animals as symbols. The penguin as resilience, the penguin as heartwarming spectacle, the penguin as a reminder that life finds a way. But the emperor penguin is not a symbol. It is a real animal with a specific biology, living in a specific place, running a survival strategy that has worked for an almost incomprehensible span of time. It did not choose to be extraordinary. It was shaped slowly by a planet that demanded extraordinary things of it. What it asks of us, if it asks anything, is not sentimentality. It is attention, understanding, a reckoning with the fact that the systems it depends on are changing faster than it can adapt, and that the choices driving those changes are ours. The thin blue line is appearing again on the horizon. Day by day, the light is coming back. The sea ice will begin to loosen. The ocean will fill with krill. The chicks, including this one, will walk to the water's edge for the first time and discover that their wings, useless in the air, are something close to perfect in the sea. And next autumn, if the ice holds, the adults will begin the march again, into the dark, into the cold, into the place nothing should survive. And somehow, because of what 40 million years of pressure has made them, they will be ready.